So, can you introduce yourself, please? Can you introduce what your organization is?
Okay. My name is Deborah Bakari, and I'm a senior social worker at Afruca, Safeguarding Children. Afruca is a children's charity, and it's also a charity that works nationally across the UK. We work to promote the well-being of children in Black and ethnic communities across the UK. The charity was established in May 2001 as a platform for advocating and promoting the overall well-being and protection of Black and ethnic children in the UK. Obviously, this was followed by some of the widely publicized deaths of children like Victoria Kalindia and Damilola Taylor, who died in 2000. They both died in 2000. We currently have our head office in London. We also run a Centre for Black and Ethnic Children and Families in Manchester, where I'm based. Again, as part of the work that we do, we run projects working with communities, different communities, on safeguarding children across various ethnic groups.
And is there anything you do, for instance, that social services might not do or might not be able to do, or that they may not have the trust of certain communities to be able to do?
Yeah, I think most of the referrals that come through our doors actually come from children's services.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And the concerns are mainly around issues to do with physical abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect. However, we have found from working with families, from different ethnic groups, we found that there are often other underlying issues.
Yeah.
Aside from the actual presenting issues that may have been referred to Afruca. So you might have issues such as forced marriage, honor-based abuse, sexual abuse, domestic abuse, female genital mutilation, witchcraft branding, or even spirit possession. Yeah. Sometimes we've had cases around domestic servitude, breast flattening and ironing. So you might find that the presenting issues is actually physical abuse or physical chastisement. But when you've sort of done your assessment with the parents, or holistic assessment, you find that there are actually underlying issues that perhaps was missed, in the first instance.
Yeah. And actually, this is how I first came across you. You produced a fascinating and very powerful booklet called "What is Witchcraft Abuse?" Could you talk about that? So you describe witchcraft as the invocation of alleged supernatural powers to control people or events using sorcery or magic. So I suppose one of the questions is, does this relate to specific local beliefs of certain sort of backgrounds, or could it also relate to, for instance, more familiar religions such as Christianity?
I think witchcraft, it cuts across different cultures and religions. So witchcraft is known by various names across different cultures. So, for example, in the Congo, it's known as Kindoki. It's known as Jinn in Tanzania and parts of North Africa. It's known as Aje in Nigeria among the Yorubas, Obie in the West Indies. Also, many Christians believe in spirit possession, but they often make a distinction between possession by the Holy Spirit and possession by evil spirits, because witchcraft is considered to be, evil or the work of the devil.
Yeah.
Islam as well also recognizes the existence of evil spirits, which is called jinn, that can take control of human beings. Islam, however, explicitly forbids the practice of witchcraft.
Right. Yeah. Whereas, for instance, Christianity doesn't forbid the practice of witchcraft.
So you could be a Christian and still believe in certain, things. Yeah.
Yeah. And in one section of the booklet, you list a number of categories of children at risk of witchcraft abuse. So being abused because of perceived witchcraft. And of these categories, you include children with dyslexia, autism, epilepsy, Down syndrome, and behavioral challenges, as well as being left-handed, and children whose parents were seen as let's say, whose parents are seen as affected by witchcraft. I mean, what's going on there? What kind of psychological or physical effects might a branding of witchcraft have on, let's say, dyslexic or autistic children?
Yeah, you find that the list, in terms of children who are at risk of witchcraft abuse is quite extensive. So even children that, maybe might have nightmares, that sleepwalk or bedwet, children living with albinism, or who identify as LGBTQI, or children living in families affiliated with faith groups that strongly believe in witchcraft and in forceful forms of deliverance or exorcism rites. They may also be at risk of witchcraft abuse. In terms of, the effect that this can have on children, when we talk about emotional abuse, for example, I think the labeling of the child as a witch is in itself, it can cause long-term damage, and affect the child's overall well-being. When you talk about the verbal abuse, the threats, the curses, and even the knowledge by the child that he or she is hated by everyone because they are a witch, then there's the self-torture because this child thinks that they are a witch and they are responsible for wicked or evil acts on people. Psychologically, you can talk about the stigma, the dehumanization that child suffers, the psychological control that comes with that, leading to things like, low self-esteem, post-traumatic stress disorder, and even mental health problems, not only in childhood, but even into adulthood. Other effects, again, can include, the child being isolated or ostracized from other members of the family or the community. They're not cared for, they're denied, any form of attention because, of course, this child is seen as evil. So they're missing out on a lot of things, even including education.
And is there a way of, I don't mean is there a way of, but is there a perceived way of sort of curing a child of being possessed? Or is this, is it a lifelong condition, or what would happen there?
So sometimes you might find that there's in a bid to rid the child of this evil spirit, a deliverance or exorcism would be carried out on the child, as a way of ridding the child of this evil spirit, and that can take many forms,
and of course an exorcism might itself be quite a traumatic thing for a child. Absolutely.
You can talk, we've talked about some of the emotional and psychological effects of witchcraft branding and the exorcism rites, but you can also look at the physical side of that, in terms of the physical abuse that the child might suffer, where the child is beaten, is starved, as a way of trying to rid the evil spirit from the child. And you find that sometimes sexual abuse does happen in such cases because the child might fall into the hands of opportunists, because in some cases no one really cares about what happens to the child, or maybe the child has been banished from the family community. It can take many forms, and sometimes it does lead to death in some cases.
Oh my God. Yeah. And actually something that you said in the booklet really shocked me. And I'm interested by how widespread this is, because in the booklet you said there are 74 cases of child abuse which could be related to accusations of spirit possession and witchcraft between 2000 and 2005, and 38 cases with clear-cut evidence of witchcraft abuse. However, based on our experience of working with different agencies on cases of children branded as witches, we are of the opinion that the numbers identified in the research are underestimated. So, could you talk about this? How is it underestimated, and why is it so widespread? That's a lot of cases of witchcraft abuse.
Yeah, we think that these cases are more widespread, than we actually know, or we might imagine. And certainly a lot of these cases are, either underreported or not reported at all because of how closed off some communities are, sometimes. So there's maybe only those few cases that come into the knowledge of authorities may then go on to be, investigated. And of course, as a result of highly negative media interest, it is possible that, exorcism rites have been pushed underground. We've heard of cases sometimes where these ceremonies are carried out in private homes and churches away from the public eye.
So there may be an aspect of sort of ingrained racism in the host country, let's say, in this case in Britain, that actually increases the likelihood of abuse in this respect.
Yeah, and of course, because as I said before, communities like to keep themselves to themselves. They don't like to talk about, what's happening within their communities in most cases. So it's about we keep our secrets to ourselves. That of course I think is also a factor.
Yeah. So what can be done about this? I mean, is there are there agencies working to counteract this, or is it just that it dies out as communities settle into a new country, or what can be done about this witchcraft abuse?
I think obviously as people migrate from or move from one country to another, they often move with their culture, their beliefs and practices. So raising awareness of the negative consequences of witchcraft branding and child abuse within our communities is therefore very important. And this is where our work at Afruca comes in. I know there are also sort of other organizations that, are also, in the forefront of fighting and creating this awareness. At Afruca, we provide education and awareness to communities, to schools, to faith organizations around this form of abuse. Obviously, I think as well as, as professionals, whether you're a social worker, you're a teacher, or you're a police, whatever, being aware of some of these cultural issues and nuances is also very important. Because if you come across such cases, why it might present as one thing, but when you dig deeper, you find that actually you're also dealing with witchcraft branding of a child. And I suppose that, it's important that parents learn about developmental needs of children, and what consists child abuse, especially, as it relates to children. Crucially, I think faith organizations as well must have really robust safeguarding policies and procedures in place to prevent witchcraft abuse from happening.
Well, I mean, look, I suppose finally, then, I'd like to just ask, I can't quite express how important I think your work is. So is there, if somebody wants to help or get involved, or if somebody needs your help, how can they get in contact with you?
Okay, so we are out there. We are on all the social media platforms. You can reach out to us. You can go on our website, which is www.afruca.org. All the information that you need is on our website. We're on Instagram, Facebook. You need all the normal social media outlets, and reach out to us, and definitely we can hopefully provide support to members of the public.
Thank you very much. I think this is absolutely hugely important work, so thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Martin.